I've gotten so many good suggestions from friends and family about gardening. Gardeners love to share advice because they've already experienced some of the challenges in gardening and have had a chance to experiment with possible solutions. I love their toolkits, and I'll spend significant time picking their brains for possible preventative measures. These are primarily home remedies, but my take on home remedies is if it isn't going to cause any harm, there's no harm trying it. My neighbor, a very experienced gardener, suggested 3 things for me. Bone meal, which is an organic fertilizer for plants containing phosphorus and protein, garlic spray, which can kill aphids and other pests, and Irish Spring soap that another friend suggested as well, which keeps the furry variety of pests away. The animals really don't like its fragrance. Another friend suggested a single Tums in a watering can to water the tomato plants at the base. Tums contain calcium, which helps the plant produce larger and juicier fruit. As well, to make sure I don't overwater the tomato plant. If I see black spots on the tomatoes, that's the issue. And they also mentioned to open my greenhouse covers when it rains, because rain contains nitrates which support plant growth. In fact, thunderstorm rain in particular is good for fertilizing plants. My sister-in-law uses coffee grounds scattered throughout the garden and cinnamon on the perimeter to keep pests away. And the plants get the same benefit from caffeine that we do. When I did this, I saw substantial growth in a short period of time. I myself have been using Miracle-Gro for vegetable gardens once a week. I put in the smallest scoop while the plants are small and will advance to the larger scoop as the plants get bigger. I dissolve it in my watering can and go about watering the plants. I connected with Becky McWhirter, the Public Education and Green Programs Coordinator with the City of Belleville. Becky had many great recommendations for local community gardeners I could contact for more information. She sent an email out to her gardening network asking them to provide advice for anyone starting out for the first time or just for the sake of anyone growing a garden. Over the course of this series, I will share what they had to say. Dave Tosh has a lot of great advice about growing tomatoes. One of the first things he mentioned was baking soda. He said it works and it really is a good trick, especially when you're growing tomatoes in containers if you want sweeter tomatoes. You simply sprinkle a small amount of baking soda around the base of the plants. The baking soda will be absorbed into the soil and lower the acidity levels, thus giving you tomatoes that are more sweet than tart. He also suggested using eggshells to boost the calcium content in the soil because just like us, calcium is one of the most important components that plants need for growth. He suggested that whether you're planting tomatoes in the garden bed or containers, you can always put eggshells in before planting. Dave also suggested planting tomatoes with 2 to 3 aspirin tablets that you can place in the hole, either whole or ground, and this will help boost the plant immunity. It also helps to ward off diseases like blight and increases the yield of tomatoes. Apparently the salicylic acid, a compound found in aspirin, is the reason why it works. He said you can also spray plants with the solution contained in this drug. He offered that if you want to read more about aspirin uses on tomato plants, to go to the website Daily Mail UK. Wendy Walton offers the following advice about spacing. She says, I think my biggest blunder when I started out was planting way too much, too close together. I really didn't pay enough attention to the spacing instructions on the plants and seeds. And as a result of the incorrect spacing, a lot of stuff didn't grow. Tomato plants produce a lot. Be careful that you can use all you grow, or that you can give it away or freeze it or can it for the winter. She said, I still make lots of mistakes, but I'm getting better. Stephen Clare talks about watering in a raised garden bed, and he says that it takes more water than a garden in the ground, so you have to make sure you're giving the garden enough. The tip that he offers is, when you're done watering, use your trowel, dig a hole, and see how far down your water has reached. The soil should be damp to at least a full trowel depth. If it isn't, you need to add more water. And the reason is, generally speaking, plants only take up water and nutrients from growing root tips. Plant roots only grow where there is free water in the soil. If you only add enough water to wet the top few centimeters, that's where you will get root growth. But soil dries from the top down, especially in high temperatures. When the soil dries, root growth stops, plants wilt, which means no nutrients are moving up into the plants from the roots, and general plant unhappiness. So a light watering encourages shallow roots, but thorough watering encourages deep roots with more resistance to drying out. And then you don't have to water as often. Rob Hamilton talks about black end rot. This can happen on your tomatoes, and it's usually caused by a calcium deficiency. So if you loop this back to the advice that Dave Tosh gave, he talked about using eggshells as a calcium supplement, and there was previous advice offered about using Tums in your watering can. I would like to personally thank all the experienced gardeners who offered their advice, not only for my benefit, but for everyone else's. Whether you're a beginner gardener or an experienced gardener who's having some specific issues with some of your plants, this kind of advice and advice exchange is always going to be beneficial for us to have the best possible yields for our gardens.